The new podcast, In the Shadow of Princeton, starts as the matriarch of a prominent Princeton family is found stabbed to death in her locked basement. Investigators look from a serial attacker to her family to Princeton University students. One hot-blooded investigator sees a conspiracy. Is he way off base, or does privilege let you get away with murder? In the Shadow of Princeton is available wherever you get podcasts, or you can binge it ad-free by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify.
Welcome back, everybody. It is Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024. Born on this date in 1968, singer-songwriter Shelby Lynn, who grew up in Jackson and Mobile. Today's National Nut Day.
He's curious.
He's a troublemaker is what he is.
He's a nut.
Be nice, although I feel like the meaning of Nut Day probably does change during big election years. But celebrate today by learning to correctly pronounce pecan. Let's talk about nervous migrants, Amtrak groundbreaking, Neyland Stadium, and the old Python Pit. I'm talking about a roller coaster, not the University of Florida's law school. I'm Mike Morgan, and we're down in Alabama. I'm sorry, attorneys. I haven't done a gator joke in a while, so there you go. I'll have to make it up to them. A report by Elena Plott Calabro in The Atlantic recently claimed that migrants throughout Alabama are afraid to leave their homes. Now, this is referring to Haitian migrants who are in the country through a temporary work program. They arrived in Alabama cities and others around the U.S. just as the nation is embroiled in a years-long debate over illegal immigration. Now, while these visitors are legal, questions over why they're here, whether they're properly vetted, and the government's motives have led to fiery council meetings and what some city officials have called, quote, baseless accusations and hurtful rhetoric, according to previous AL.com reporting. Now, the piece in The Atlantic cited Albertville pastor Johnny Pierre Charles and conversations he's had with Haitians locally. He said he's told them to be patient and not afraid, but that some are even wondering whether to flee to Canada after the election. There's an Amtrak moment in Mobile today. At 2 p.m., a groundbreaking ceremony will mark the beginning of construction of a layover track where a twice-daily passenger train is expected to run between Mobile and New Orleans, reports AL.com's John Sharp. Even U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg will be there. And when will that train go online? They don't know yet. An ideal scenario would have the line up and running by the February 11th Super Bowl at the Superdome in New Orleans, but you'd better not bet the truck on that yet. This work will actually be restoring a connection that was taken down by Hurricane Katrina in 2005. The Sunset Limited once ran from Los Angeles through New Orleans and Mobile and on to Jacksonville. Neyland Stadium was awfully loud during Saturday's 24-17 Tennessee win over Alabama. The noise dominated the atmosphere and could have even contributed to 3 false starts that were called on the Crimson Tide's offense. And a question has arisen that's certainly not new to college or NFL football. Was all that noise really coming from the 101,915 in attendance? AL.com's Nick Kelly reports that some Alabama voices don't think it was. Crimson Tide radio broadcaster Chris Stewart said on the broadcast that some of the crowd noise was being piped in. And former Tide quarterback A.J. McCarron agreed with that on social media Monday, saying that he's 100% sure that Tennessee does. However, a University of Tennessee spokesperson and athletics director Danny White both have denied any of the crowd noise was artificial. So the question remains, as does the one regarding whether Florida State University is piping in the yawns during its home games this season. Now, if you haven't checked the auction site GovDeals lately, you're probably missing out on the kiddie roller coaster that's up for at least $8,000 as of this recording, reports AL.com's Heather Gann. And back in the day, we thought the first kid on the block to have an Atari was cool. Now, the coaster gets as high as 12 feet in the air and needs 3-phase power and a small air compressor, according to the listing. To add to the appeal, it's called the Python Pit. The city of Tuscumbia put the coaster up for auction. It's currently at Spring Park there in Tuscumbia, and they say that it was operating just fine when they stopped using it in 2021. Now, if you buy it, you'll have to disassemble it and get it out of there in 10 days. Bidding ends at 2:45 p.m. October 31st. And before I let y'all go, I ran a poll in the newsletter yesterday asking whether people would take advantage of early voting if we had the option here in Alabama. Now, I realize such a poll is about as scientific as a Roadrunner cartoon, but it was pretty strong on the yes side. More than 85% of the people said they'd likely use the early voting option. Others did comment their concerns over election security. Thank y'all so much for listening. We're going to be back here again tomorrow. Until then, come on by and see what we're doing on the internet at al.com.